Communist internet. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. You're in the team room with Ones Ready. We're here to talk about something today that is very near and dear to all of our hearts. That is senior NCOs. And to start this, I did send a text out the other day to these fine gentlemen, Jared, Aaron, Peaches, whatever your name is. I don't know, short guy. And I wanted to talk about senior NCOs. I had an incident the other day where I was talking to a senior airman. That's an E4. And I was like, hey, so I'm an old senior NCO, so it's like my job to be annoying to all these people, to ask them how they're doing.
Interrupt
what are
their
your
day.
Plans? Yeah,
because you want to talk about stuff. So you're like, hey there, Airman, you got 5 minutes for me? They're like, not really. I'm doing the entire office's work, but I can't say no because you're an E8. But anyway, what do you got for me, Senior Master Sergeant Sig Miller?
What are your future plans? Are you going to stay in for 20? How's it been so far, young person? Like, what are the kids into these days? You know, that type of stuff. But during this super awkward conversation that I was having basically with myself, the senior airman did start talking about their chain of command. And they were like, it's weird that you're being nice to me. And I was like, I don't, like, huh? They're like, well, you're an E8. Like, why are you speaking to me like I'm a person? Our senior NCOs, like, never come around. And when they do, it's, like, super awkward and they don't talk to us. And I can't stop thinking about it because I got so mad in that moment. Not because I think I'm a better senior NCO than anybody else. I think we all know that I'm pretty terrible at what I do. But there is one thing that I care about. And that one thing is people. And I can't understand how you can go through your entire career, end up in the senior NCO ranks, and not interact with people and not try to, maximize the talents and abilities and all those other things of the people below you, and also try to bring them up with you. And so I have a few theories about why senior NCOs, lose track of where I think they should go. But I want to, see what you guys think as well. So that's why I dragged you out here this morning to tell you all these fun stories.
Okay.
Hit
us with your first idea, Trent. Why reason number one, theory number one, why do you think senior NCOs sometimes have a disassociation from the people problem?
Well, hurt people. So I think it's easy for them to think that they understood what was happening early on in their career. So if you're an E4 back in like early GWAT or whatever, and your senior NCO was mean in your mind, and then you make it there someday, and you're this like E7, E8, this mentality of, well, this is how it was for me, so this is how it's going to be for the next generation, is just so. I think it's fairly pervasive. Like we see it all the time. Like, well, when I was a dude, like stop thinking about yourself. Like so many self-centered people that are in love with whatever their idea of their experience was, that they're going to pass that along to the next generation instead of. Like, if you're so grumpy about the way it was for you, why wouldn't you change that? So, yeah. Like, how many times have you guys heard that? Someone was like, well, when I was coming up, or my E8s when I was young were a bunch of dicks. So why wouldn't we all be dicks?
Right. Well, and it's a little bit narcissistic, right? Like, inherent in that view is like, well, they made me into this super stellar guy that I am today. So I need to make sure that I can make you into a good guy. And this is how you do it. Like, there's all of these things are wrapped up in, nature versus nurture. And a lot of it is parenting, like leading, guiding, mentoring, trying to bring up the next generation. Like you can't help but that's why you call people kids. And that's why you feel like sometimes at work, like people will call their team sergeant dad, and if you have the, quintessential Hollywood senior NCO, that's like, he's seen stuff, man. He's grizzled. He ain't got time for you young kids today. That it becomes like almost this caricature that people put on. And it's funny watching people go from like E6 to E7, because the minute they put on E7, they take on this whole different affect. I'm like, bro, you're the same guy you were a week and a half ago. You just have a little different rank on your chest. Like, why are we acting differently? It's a weird thing. And it
all
does
of a sudden
happen.
They're like, what are you, a weatherman? You're telling me how nice today is? It's like, whoa, dude.
Take it easy, Tom. We just had lunch last week. You had 2 beers. It was great. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Peaches? What? You got anything? You looked like you were going to say something.
No. I've never understood the grizzled and crusty. I mean, they're fun to make fun of, right? It's funny. You got some grizzled and crusty, salty senior NCO and that kind of stuff. But I don't get the disassociation, and I don't get the. I think I know more. Obviously, you are going to be wiser in the ways of the Air Force and the way the military works and stuff like that, right? Just because you've been around it, you've had that kind of time to season and see the ebbs and flows of what the military naturally does, whether it's in terms of manning, in terms of, okay, the Air Force is really fat. Now it's slimmed down. The whole, you get all the different do more with less, which we all know what do more with less means. It's just... so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
No. Well, and I remember being, like an E4. I think it takes a village, to turn someone like me into a decent human being, right? Like, so like, it's not like every senior NCO that I ever like looked up to was the same person. Like we had the guy at my detachment at Fort Bragg who was like kind of like the team dad or mom who like took care of everybody, but would also hold you to the standards. We did have that like crusty dude, and I've talked about him, who like legit threatened our lives if we didn't stay in good enough shape. Like if he catches you on a run, I was fairly certain he was going to crack my skull open, and do whatever he had to do. But so like when I say this, I'm thinking a lot of these people might just not have the confidence to lead or to be the senior NCO that they who they are, like just to be like open and honest about everything. That's the only excuse I can come up with why you wouldn't interact with the younger people in your unit if you're like not very confident in the way that you're going to interact with them, if you're afraid of being seen as like a human being instead of, the senior NCO, the person in charge, the team sergeant or whatever. So, I think I've seen that a few times throughout my career too. Like the people that are less confident in their abilities tend to be a little more closed off and a little more, by the book.
Well, it could be an extrovert versus introvert kind of thing. Also a comfort level thing. I don't like being behind my computer. However, I find myself behind my computer more often just because I fall so far behind with things that need to get done. And unfortunately, being on the computer or being on the phone is also one of the ways that I am, helping members with pay issues, assignment issues, whether there's disciplinary issues like that. That is the way now that I essentially work. And then also I have to, divide my time and understand that I need to spend time with people as well. So it's tough because I know that for every, half hour or whatever it is that I am either on the road traveling, out at a lunch with, with somebody or just going and visiting unit, that I am falling farther and farther behind. So it's understanding that. So, that's why my phone is attached to me all the time, which I'm sure people notice, but it's like, damn, dude, I got to, because I'm always getting phone calls. I'm always getting messages. I got to follow up. And if I have a 10-minute break, now I need to call, like, I need to use this 10 minutes to start knocking out some of my to-do list. And then you fall into that part where you get comfortable with it, in terms of you're like, oh man, being behind the computer is my comfort zone. And that is not a good place to be. And I recognize that myself, even though I hate being behind the computer and look for excuses to get out from behind it. So
it's every E7's dream. And you say it the day that you put it on, you're like, I'm not going to be that master sergeant that's out of shape. I'm not going to be that guy that just sits in his office and does stuff. I'm going to maintain all my currencies. I'm going to be with the bros. Like, this is going to be a thing. And then, you get mugged by reality where you have 25 EPBs to write every cycle and, 30 awards. And your primary duty is a different duty than you had maybe, even as a team sergeant. Like, your job isn't to go out and job every single day on core skills. If you're a good NCO, if you were a good NCO and a good teammate, you were doing that for 10 years before that, right? Like, it's time to do other things as your primary duty. And it's hard to strike a balance. There are definitely times in my career where I walked out of my office for the first time all day and was like, I was just drowning in admin. Like, I couldn't go out on, somebody would poke their head in and they'd be like, hey, we're going to go to lunch. Looking back on it now, I think that admin work probably would have been there after I turned lunch down, and maybe I should have went out and been like, hey, you know 100%. What? This is going to get put in there when it gets put in there. And yeah, let's go sit down for lunch. Or yeah, you know what? I can take 4 hours off and go to the range today, as opposed to doing this other admin work that needs to get done. But it's easy to lose sight of it. Like, and I think we all have, just like you said, you get behind the computer, you start knocking out that to-do list. And like anything else, you're just going to job out until that task is done. But you have to find a balance. because people do notice it. It is one of those things where your team will, pull you aside, or, I've had really good officers just be like, hey, I got this crap today. Go out and do this training event with the boys, or go out and get a couple jumps off and lean in that way. So it's tough though, because there is work to be done. There's always work to be done that you have to do. And being on the team at that level, that E7, E8, E9 level, that's not your primary duty. Your primary duty is being on everybody's team.
No, and that's true. And to the senior airmen, that pulled you off to the side, Trent, and then what you're talking about, Aaron, I think that 10 minutes or that 30 minutes or even that 4 hours that you spend with that person or that group of people is more of an investment and more important than it is making sure that those X amount of 30 EPBs or whatever it is completed.
Yeah. I think sometimes there's two things that happen in my mind anyway, right? There's the people that think that they're more important now since they made E7 or whatever, got the top of their house. But then I know personally, like my thing is like, I'm like, well, I'm just a mass sergeant now. Like, who cares? But looking back, just like, a few minutes a day as an E4 with the E7 talking to me, like those were like huge moments in my life, like them just like sitting down or chit-chatting with me in the hallway. And I think sometimes it's easy for some of us to lose sight of how influential we can be or should be to the younger folks in our organizations, right? And getting those priorities straight. And so I think you can go either way with that too. Like, you can get drowned in the paperwork, you can become an a-hole, or you can just be like, no, it's not a big deal, like without really fully grasping the responsibility and the influence that you can have on the organization as a senior NCO, and not taking full advantage of it for the younger people, and just trying to be like, no, like it's just E7. It's like, no, well, it's not, like it meant something when you were an E3, E4, when they would talk to you and like share their experiences with you. And so there's also that responsibility to do the same thing when you make it there.
So that's something that I struggle with, because at the same time, I'm like, why would you want to talk to me? Like, right. Okay, the chief's here. Like, why? Do you really want me to be there? Like, let's be honest. Do you really want me to be there? And so that's the way I look at it. Cause I go, because of who you've talked about is I got to, in the past, I had somebody in there that, you almost, at least with some of them, we didn't always trust them because they're in there and they're always, just scoping things out. What's inappropriate on the wall? Who's got inappropriate shit on their desk? Who's, surfing the internet instead of, programming radios or whatever it is. Right. And then you'd end up hearing about it. So that's why we were always kind of like, oh, why do we want a chief in there? And what I've been told and the feedback that I've gotten, from some of the other TACP senior NCOs that are here is they're like, no, dude, we want you to be around. We want you because you have perspective that we don't have, and you're part of conversations that we don't have, and we need to hear it so that we know what's going on, so that we at least can trust you and know that you're not planning, talking, and doing anything like that in kind of in a bubble and in a vacuum. So
it's another weird dynamic too, because you do have influence. You are part of those conversations, those higher level conversations, those higher level decisions. So it's a weird thing where you want to be on the team with the bros, but I don't know how many parties I've left early. I don't know how many events that I've just, because like you can't have fun when dad's around. No. You know what I mean? Like it's this weird thing. Like you walk into the team room and, as the op soup or as, whatever senior level position that you CEL or SEL or whatever it is that you're doing inside the squadron, there is that, when the chief walks in the room, you're like, hey, what's going on? And it really does kind of like interrupt the day. So I was always super sensitive to that. When we would have team parties and stuff, it would start going downhill, and I'd be like, all right, well, if you guys need anything, give me a call, but I'm going to make my exit here so that number one, I have plausible deniability. And number two, you guys can actually relax and have fun and not have to worry about, making a fool out of yourself in front of me or thinking that you did, because I never cared. You could do whatever you want. It was never a thing that I ever cared about. But it is a weird thing because you do have that influence. You do hold that position of authority. You are going to speak and make decisions that are going to be good and bad for the team. Like you're going to have to make decisions that don't go everybody's way all the time. You cannot possibly make everybody happy. The training cycle gets in the way of birthdays and first days of school and, a whole bunch of other stuff. And you're going to have to make hard decisions. So it's a tough tightrope to balance, and it does suck. It wears on you. Heavy is the head that lies the crown, even in those like middle management sort of positions.
Well, is it easier to give people bad news via email instead of like face to face?
Oh my gosh.
Like,
no, I hate. Oh God, I hate giving people bad news via the email.
I think my question is: Are NCOs getting enough reps? Like giving people negative feedback or bad news, or making decisions for them to be comfortable with it once they become senior NCOs. Like it's one of those things. It's a lot easier to send an email and be like, "This is what's happening," instead of like looking at people face to face and being like, "Hey, this is what's happening," and then having to explain it. Like I think senior NCO's job, like half of the job is what just translating everything, right? Like taking intent and orders, translating it, making it make sense for the organization as much as possible, and then implementing it right in the way that makes the most sense for everybody. So I think sometimes like we're doing this like whole like be nice to everybody and inclusion, and like all these are good words, right? But like sometimes we miss the boat on getting the reps in to be like, no, this is the way it is, and being a little more black and white with people and being like, this is how we're moving forward. If you have concerns, let's talk about it. But like I don't know how many reps you guys got, as an NCO, like, but that's like one of those things as an instructor that it made it pretty easy for me to like get used to staring people in the eyes and telling them the worst news possible, and just dealing with the consequences and then having to explain it.
Well, I didn't get too many reps as an NCO doing that, but I definitely from the time I put E7 or Master Sergeant on, definitely got a lot of reps. Just because I was at the weapons school, it's a very debrief heavy. Every time you're going out, you're coming back, you're receiving good and bad info. You're providing good and bad info, saying, "Hey, you messed this up. You messed this. Additionally, we had a couple deaths, within the community out while I was out at Nellis, and so having to tell, being the SEL during that time, having to kind of sit everybody and tell, when their friends passed away, that kind of stuff. So I have definitely, as a senior NCO, gotten a lot more reps at it. But I mean, I don't know if you guys got anything on that, but I had one other thing.
No, go.
Okay, cool.
Chief it up.
I think we have to trust people and their ability to receive good and bad information. I think we think like, oh, this person's going to be distraught. This person's just not going to take it well. And I'm sure that there are folks that, in fact, I know that there are folks that do not receive, critiques or bad information well, of course. But I think we also have to trust that, hey, this person is an adult. They have been in the military for a while, at least by the time we get them, 6 months at a minimum, thinking about some of our special warfare mission support. And that, hey, this is the beginning of their career to not just the Air Force, but adulthood. And we need to help give them that opportunity to react to good and bad information, and somebody being critical of them, saying, hey, you've messed this up. These are the ways that you can improve. Like, this is how I rate you in terms of your performance so far. And here's how you can improve and move forward. So I think we just got to trust people versus the email thing going, hey, you messed this up. If you got any questions, let me know. Here's my number.
I think there's another dynamic too, that, the social landscape has changed in such a way where there is a good bit of fear, and I won't say it's completely unfounded. Like, the feedback that I got as a young, staff sergeant, even tech sergeant, like, it was very pointed. And I never thought to be like, oh, you're being mean to me because I am who I am, so I'm going to tell on you to my boss. And I think there is a pretty big undercurrent now where it is kind of like walking on a landmine where you're like, man, I got to give this feedback in such an objective and clear black and white way that it can't seem like there's any personal bias in here, that it can't seem like I'm doing it for any other reason, because like that stuff comes out so quickly now. And, when the DE and I, you mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion earlier, Trent. I was just thinking about how that has really changed the nature of feedback. And I'm sure that's another thing that people have to get used to. Because just me as a person, I can walk into a room and go, hey, you're an idiot. You really screwed up this training event. I have no idea why it is. You acted the way you did. Don't do that again. Here's the progression forward. Here's how we're going to make it better. Okay, let's go. And that could be a completely different conversation to somebody on the receiving end just by my tone, by the words that I use and all this other stuff. And it can lead to serious issues. So I think that's a pretty big wrinkle that folks are going to have to deal with now and in the future as far as feedback and, how NCOs talk to their subordinates. And it can be a problem.
Well, you got to cage it, right? Like, I think in my career, my supervisors are like, I don't know, 50% accurate on like initial feedback.
Mm-hmm.
But I still remember my initial feedback. And I remember one time in particular when I was in weather where my new supervisor sat me down and like actually went through like, hey, these are your expectations for the year. So everything that I got from that supervisor for the next year, and then at the 6-month mark when I got my update, like, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z if you want a certain rating on your whatever, if you want me to back you to go to airborne school and all this other stuff. And so I think it starts in the very beginning. Like if you never give this person initial feedback and show them like what your standards and expectations are in the work environment, then everything you say to them is without context. It is your job as that NCO, senior NCO, to provide that context for your organization to understand why feedback is happening the way that it is happening, and what the intent is. Because without the context and intent, it's like, well, then you're just being a dick. It's like, no. Like, here's where I wrote down, like, you need to be better at this. Like I said, 90%, you're at 80%. So until you get there, I'm going to tell you that you are not meeting the standards and it has nothing to do with anything else. It is 100% the expectations that we laid out.
Well, that's why the expectations have got to be essentially like metrics. They've got to be attainable or whatever that is. The
SMART goals.
The SMART goals thing. They've got to be obtainable. They got to be realistic. They've got to be timely. And then that way the person can also measure themselves against it too. And it's not some surprise whenever you tell them like, hey, you actually haven't met these. You've been late on whatever. You showed up late to work X amount of times. Like, I mean, come on, man. You gotta do better. Be better. What's wrong with you? You got to go curry the goats.
Who's going to curry the goats, my guy? Yeah. I will say the formalization of that feedback process, because you were supposed to do it all the time, right? Like for years and years and years, people were like, oh, did you get a feedback in this performance cycle? And you would just like, when you're filing their EPR, you'd be like, oh yeah, totally. And you would just like pencil whips some form. You'd be like, oh yeah, tight. The formalization of the initial feedback and then that midterm feedback inside of the reporting period has been great as far as I'm concerned, because it's a tool for both that E4 that's wondering like, dude, am I on track here? Like 6 months into this thing, like I don't understand why I'm not getting these schools. And they sit down with their supervisor and their supervisor goes, well, yeah, because we talked about this stuff and you're not doing it. And now you're not on track for a good rating. I'm not going to push you up for forced distribution when this EPB comes out because you haven't lived up to the expectations we set out. But it's good for both sides. It's good for those NCOs to get those reps to do a bunch of initial feedback and then learn how to make goals. It's a learning process for the NCO as well. To understand what a SMART goal is, to understand, okay, well, what is achievable? What is realistic? What are some stretch goals that you want to do? I don't know how many times I've sat down with dudes, and because I was really big on actually doing the initial feedback, like actually sitting down and having the talk and going through the form. And I would learn things about the guys that I had no idea. They're like, I had one guy that was an SR guy, and he was like, listen, man, I want one more instructor assignment to kind of just chill out. I want to go do something completely different. I don't want to go to all these advanced schools. I don't want to do all of these advanced things. Like, that's not my goal for my life in the next 5 years. And I was like, hey, fair enough, man. You know what? Like, I didn't agree with it. I told the guy, I'll call him Mike. I was like, Mike, I don't agree with this. And I think that's a pretty crappy way. I'm like, you're basically telling me you just want to maintain the bare status quo and then get out and go do something else. And he was like, yeah, I'll tell you what, number one, I didn't know that. But number two, I could then prioritize other people that did want to go to those schools, that did want those opportunities, that did want to make rank and go on and do different things in different units. I didn't know that beforehand. And it sucked to hear but at least he was honest with me, and I would have never known that had I like his life would have been miserable because I would have been pushing him to do something that he didn't want. He wouldn't have performed. That would have made my life, miserable, because then I would have to counsel him and talk to him about it all the time. It would have been just this nasty feedback cycle. And again, I don't necessarily agree with the approach, but that's what he wanted to do for his life. He wanted to serve the rest of his contract out and then be on his merry way doing something else. And it just is what it is. But that was all through the conversation that we had during that initial feedback.
It's a formal way to get to know your people, just like you said. And like you can put it on the calendar. Like as soon as you get into that supervisor position, like I loved that. I loved being able to be like, hey, I'm going to take my guys, down to the golf course, for breakfast, like my 2 staff sergeants or whatever, on this morning. And like no one can say anything about it. Like my master sergeant, like, it's like, hey, like I'm going to go do initial feedback. I got a few eyebrows raised up. Like, really? Like you're going to go give people feedback? I'm like, yeah, like I just got to the 2-3. Like I want to know who my staff sergeants are. I want to know, they need to know my expectations. And like we're a team, like their success is my success. And so like it's just a real nice opportunity to sit down. Like it's stupid, right? Like if you look at it on paper, it can look dumb. Like, oh, what are your goals for like this year or whatever? Like you can be real cynical about it. Or you can sit down and have a conversation with these people, write all the stuff down, and then be like, okay, like whatever you need to accomplish these goals to get you where you need to be, this is where we need to be as a team. Like, and as long as all that stuff is symbiotic and we get along and like we're our little NCO core that's like pushing everything along, like it's just gonna make everything better. So, like you're never gonna have time for everything. But these are the types of things where I think these things get pushed off to the side sometimes because we have 800 emails coming into our inbox every single day. Like the boss wants us to be at that meeting. We need to go up to the group or the wing together because like you're the subject matter expert on X, Y, and Z. And I really need you to sit in here just in case I can't answer this question. It's like, hey, okay, but also my people are the most important thing. Like this is the culture and this is where the rubber is going to meet the road. And if this doesn't happen, the rest of it doesn't matter. And so like take advantage of the opportunities that you have.
Yeah.
Got him.
I don't know where to go for there.
Sorry,
but Aaron, you did say something earlier when you started talking about position of authority. And I did want to kind of bring this up is, you especially going back to your conversation with the senior airman Trent, is he automatically kind of looked at you as you had credibility because you're a senior master sergeant. He probably knows you just from this anyway, so like that aspect of it. But generally, there is some foundational level of credibility as a senior NCO, but it can be lost so fast by incompetence, being an asshole, integrity issues. Like, hey, if a senior airman knows you're freaking lying because you know why? Because he was there or she saw your actions. Like, it's just, it can be lost so quickly. And that goes with everything, right? That's not just senior NCOs, but I think it's important for senior NCOs to act appropriately and understand that people are watching them. And as soon as it's just like any other, command sergeant major or chief. And that's the joke is what all the memes is the E7 in the shop, the flight chief. And then all of a sudden you get a brand new A1C in from basic, some 18, 19-year-old, like you can lose that really, really freaking fast.
So gross. I don't even want to talk about that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. Terrible topic, Peaches. Good job.
That's the thing. You're on a pedestal, right? Like you have all those straps on your shoulder or whatever. Everybody's watching you. So yeah, every action that you take is going to hold the weight of your rank or your position and all those other things. And there's a whole lot more senior airmen with eyes and ears and that have time to pay attention to what you're doing than you have time to pay attention to them. So like everything is a multiplier, of 10, or whatever it is. All your actions are going to be scrutinized in that way. But you are going to make mistakes though too. Like that's the next thing that I want to roll into. Like how many mistakes did we all make as staff sergeants and tech sergeants as we learned how to be the supervisors that, we looked up to and we wanted to be in the future, like I jacked up all kinds of stuff. Like I had probably negative impacts on people's careers and my own career and all this other stuff. But like, you have to move past it. And if your ego is so like wrapped up in this like rank thing, it's like, no, like I don't make mistakes because I'm the supervisor now. I'm the senior NCO now. And I think we've all seen this. You're never going to grow. And so you have to be willing to, have some candid conversations with people as well. Be like, I made a mistake, even to the people that you're supervising, and grow and move forward from that. Otherwise, you're just going to be a toxic person in that organization. I know the toxic word is.
Bleh, you've used so many therapy words today.
Toxic.
Yeah, right. I don't know.
How else do you say it? You're going to be a shitty supervisor, and no one's going to like you.
Yeah,
there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, therapy words.
I love therapy words. They're doing great. So Trent, if we were going to lay it out, right? Like if we were going to give, and by the way, this applies not only to senior NCOs, but we're basically just talking about leadership, right? We're talking about going to that next level of leadership, and everybody in the pipeline is going to do it. There's going to be a day where you're going to be the leader at ANS. You might be the senior airman in charge of a detail. You might be, a staff sergeant that's running through team, and you're actually an NCOIC or something. But if we were going to lay it out, so pitfalls to avoid, or a roadmap to success for senior NCOs, Trent, what would you say is number one? Like, what's the one thing you just got to focus on first, and then everything else will fall in line?
You can't pull anybody up to where you're at if you're not doing the things that you're telling everybody else to do, right? Like, if you can't lead from the front, then what are you doing? And not everybody's going to have the same strengths, right? So like the things that I care about as a supervisor and the things that I really harp on, obviously, are the things that I've worked on and are my strengths. And that's where I'm gonna push the organization. But like I'm not gonna go to the PT stud and be like, you need to work out more. Like he can do more pull-ups than I can. Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? But like you have to hold yourself to the same standard as everybody else. Otherwise, it's all fake, and everybody will know it.
So accountability, number one. You're not gonna ask other people to do what you won't do yourself. Peaches, what would be another little nugget of wisdom that you would give to somebody in that new leadership position?
Well, I guess it's kind of a vein or an offshoot of that, but I think that you're not too good or not too high of rank to get down in the weeds and do stuff, right? It doesn't, I know that we, in the team room, we, hey, you're the new dude, like take out the trash, right? That's as simple as I can make it. New guy, go around, pick up the trash, or get all the trash bags, take it out. Just because you're a team sergeant, just because you're the squadron SEL or whatever it is, you can get in there and you can do it too. If we're clearing out a building, because hey, this room or this building's got to get cleared out, and it hasn't been touched in 10 years, and things have got to get moved, and it's going to be nasty. Your ass better be in there too. Not, hey, I got these meetings I got to go to, or, oh boy, man, love to, but I got these stripes, so beat it, nerds. Like, you better be in there doing the exact same thing, and probably working harder than every single person in there. I got it. You're probably broken. Your knees hurt. Your back hurt. Okay, maybe you don't lift the biggest freaking heaviest thing in there, but you better be in there, and you better be as dirty as everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I'm gonna go on a little touchy feely one, since we're in therapy land. Thanks to Trent. Is don't be too hard on yourself. You're not going to be the world's best leader. Like, every day that you have as a leader is a new day and a new experience. So people, I've seen, friends of mine get in there and they're just like, oh, this sucks. I don't know what I'm doing or whatever. Some of the best input that I got from a great chief mentor of mine, because I basically said the same thing. I was like, dude, I had no idea what I'm doing as a flight chief. I was an E7 or an E6 at the time out in Vegas. But I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel like I'm failing every day, and I'm not on top of stuff. Guys will come to me with problems and I don't know what to tell them. I've never dealt with it before. And he was like, bro, do you think I know what I'm doing? I've never been a chief before. I set a record this morning when I showed up to work. It's the longest streak I've had of coming to work as a chief. He's like, and I do that every single day. And he's like, I have no idea what I'm doing either. You're juggling flaming chainsaws every single day. He's like, you can't be that hard on yourself. Of course, you're not good at being a flight chief. Have you ever been a flight chief before? And I was like, well, no. He's like, well, there you go. we figured out why you're not good at it because you haven't done it very much. He's like, and I'm going to consistently put you in positions where you're going to do new and bigger things so that you can grow through it. All growth is uncomfortable. So just don't be too hard on yourself for the bros and the chicks that are going through, A&S and the pipeline and stuff right now. You're going to be a leader and you're going to fail. And you're going to fail in front of people, and you're going to fail in front of people that you care about. Like, you have to just take that one on the chin, learn from it what you need to, and then go on with your life. Because if you're that hard on yourself, that's going to be a thing in the back of your head. Like, if you're that hard on yourself, your biggest critic, which is yourself, is going to tell you that you shouldn't try to take on new things because of that fear. So I don't know how you make amends with it. I don't know, what works right for you. But you got to find a way to just accept it for what it is. Don't be too hard on yourself and press on.
Well, that goes for the folks that, whether it's their commander, their squadron chief, or the folks, essentially above them, right? Is that they have to recognize that it's your third week in that position as a flight chief. You're going to continue to mess things up. You're not going to be at the same level, potentially at the same level of somebody that's been doing it for 3 years, So there's got to be some grace and accepting that person has a lot to learn and that they are going to get better at it. Again, they've only been in it for 3 weeks. So, let them fail, but then guide them and provide mentorship to them to pull them along to where you need them to be or where the organization needs them to be.
Yeah. The moment you get comfortable, though, doing something, they are going to move you to do something else. You're like, the first day you show up to work and you're like, I think I got this. They're going to be like, hey, come to my office. We got a new thing for you.
I feel pretty good about this.
Yeah.
Son of
Speaking of feelings and all this therapy talk, do you know where I put all my feelings? I put them in an Eberly stock bag. That's how I carry them all around. And I can pull them out whenever I want to and be like, this person's a toxic leader. But you know, not toxic? The bags. They're super convenient. They can hold all my feelings, anything that I need to carry around. Veteran-owned company. We like the folks out there in Boise, Idaho. I hate that they have better weather than I do almost all the time. Except for when it starts snowing, then I'll make fun of you. But we have a code, OR10, eberlystock.com. If you're hunting, an outdoorsman, military stuff, they got basically everything you need. I think Aaron likes the Bando bag, but it's only on my Facebook page like every 15 seconds.
It is everywhere.
Nobody hates it more than I do. Trust me.
I bet.
Nobody hates it more than I do. You should, not the Bando bag. I love it. I have 2 of them now. I wear them all the time. Different colors. They're great for your everyday carry, for everything that you need to carry. They're awesome. But seeing myself talk about the Bando bag makes me feel some type of way. But go check them out at eberlystock.com. Use the code OR10. You'll get yourself a sweet discount and maybe take some time away from the Facebook. You won't have to see me talking about it because I understand the memes. I get it.
Yeah. Well, if in case that ruck does get too heavy, you could always use other methods of burying that stuff or therapeutic stuff, and you can do that through 18alphafitness.com, 18alphafitness.com, using the promo code 1READY, the number 1 ready, to get you some kind of training plan to prep for the pipeline, prep for the Q course, buds, ranger school, or just to get in shape in general. He's got an app. He's got kettlebell stuff, Brazilian jitsu stuff.
The jitsu stuff.
So close.
Jitsu stuff.
You were so close. Yeah, jitsu stuff.
Jitsu stuff and ninja people and stuff. So
she's ninja stars.
Anyway, Kevin's got a great program over there. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's got experience in it. He was a Green Beret in the past, and was a strength and conditioning coach at SWIC. Well, I guess at the time it was probably prep, but
it was the in between course, whatever they're calling that now. When you're in between courses, but you kind of handled everybody. Yeah,
at the swamp. Something
battle,
like that.
Then it was the swamp, and then they came up with like another name for it. I can't keep track of it.
I can't remember what the other one was.
All the lost children that need somoone to look up to.
All the misfit toys.
Children.
Yes.
So yeah, check him out. Kevin's good shit. So 18alphafitness.com, promo code 1 and then ready.
It's weird when we talk about Kevin because like Aaron's like, no, like he's like, hey, if you need anything on the app, like he gives you that one-on-one attention. I'm like, Kevin in real life is like, suck it up, stop being such a, Kevin is a terrifying individual. And then like he gets on the app, like under 18 Alpha, he's like, hey man, how's it going? Like, maybe if your RPE was a little too high today, take a little bit of time off, or like take a little bit longer to do the workout. I'm like, I don't know who this person is anymore. Like, Kevin, what happened to you?
Well, that's another good trait of a leader, senior NCOs, is communication and finding different ways to communicate with different people at the right time. I think that's another little cheat code for senior NCOs or anybody in leadership, is finding different ways to communicate with people. I don't know how many times I've said this, this sort of thing, through my time as an instructor or just, day to day. Somebody will come to me and go, "Oh, I can't stand this guy. I explained it to him 100 times and he still does it the wrong way." I'm looking at him and okay. So in any communication, the sender is usually the problem. It's not usually the receiver that's the problem in any communication. You need to find a different way to explain it to him. You need to find a different method, maybe, as opposed to just explaining it to him or going, "Hey, be better. That wasn't fast enough." Well, teach him how to be more efficient. Teach him how to do the task differently. Show him how to do the task. Show him how you do the task. There's a million ways that you can communicate to get to where it is that you need to be. And I think, relationships are always the easiest one to highlight this. But I don't know how many times, I've seen my friends just explain something to their wife, like especially like trying to teach them how to golf swing or try to teach them how to do a movement in the gym. And they say it over and over and over again. And then one of our friends will step in and be like, "Hey, yeah, you just kind of like put your elbow up a little bit higher." She does it right. She's like, "Oh," and you're like, "I've been saying that to you for 2 hours."
Yeah.
But there was a barrier in communication, and that other person figured out how to communicate in that way. But you really do have to be an adept communicator, because not everybody takes in information the same way. And you have to be able to talk to, 10, hundreds of different people, throughout your day, and get them to understand, your guidance, your intent. You need to sometimes decipher what the commander wants and get them to understand it in a way that they have buy-in. And that stuff is tough, and you have to work on it.
Well, I mean, look at the communication on this podcast alone. You've got 3 different communicators right now. And I like, from my point of view, I'd say that probably you two are more kind of aligned than I am. Right? I mean, is that a fair assessment?
I just like when you start saying something, because I never know where it's going to end. That's my favorite part, is you'll start talking.
Guess what? Guess what? I don't know either, because you have no idea how many times thoughts and words in my mind just go fleeting. It's gone. So I don't know where I'm going either.
Well, we've all had different experiences, right? Like, so Aaron and I think do have like a lot of similarities in the way we think about stuff. But like Peaches, you come on here and you talk about stuff all the time. Like, it happened on this episode where you were talking about something. I'm like, oh, that's a little bit of a different way to approach that, and a different way to explain it, and it's good, and that's what it takes, right? Because whether you're a leader or a teacher or anything, like if you're teaching a class, right, and all the students get one thing wrong, is that a failure of the students or is that a failure of the teacher?
Teacher, 100%.
Right. I mean, I remember being in weather school, and like there was this teacher we had who could not get through to any of us. Like, all of us were like, we are all about to fail this test, and to your point, Aaron, this other dude, this like Navy AG1, just like comes bebopping into the room on our break and is like, "Oh, this is what you guys are talking about?" Gave like a 13-second lecture on like how to like, differentiate fog versus clouds or something stupid weather stuff.
Nerds.
But like the way he said it, we were all like, why didn't we've been learning this for 3 weeks. And like this other dude just like walks in here, no pressure environment, explains it to us. And like all of us, it clicked. And, saved us all from being washed back in the stupid long tech school that it was. But
those little things are what I write down, and I save those, and I try and memorize those, because they're so good. And it's so awesome to see a good teacher, just a natural teacher, or somebody who is, maybe it's not natural, maybe they just worked on their craft for so long and they have been able to communicate it that well. And I will write that stuff down all day long and just use it for my own.
I think that's something that we miss a lot. I know there's like a personal thing. Like, we say leader all the time in the Air Force, and I hate it. Tired of calling everybody a leader. Like, there's so many different ways to go after this. Like, you are a teacher. Like, if you're a team sergeant and you're not like a great in-person leader, like some of the stuff that I did, like I would take my guys and make little elements. And I know that I have 2 guys that are way more, personable and have a lot of credibility with their guys. They have way more than I do, but like I'm in charge of them. I only have to talk to 2 people. Like, I don't have to be the guy that stands in front of everybody all the time and talks to them necessarily. But you find different ways to get after the problems. You know what I mean? Like, You got to know who you are. You got to know how you teach people. You got to know how you put out your intent and your personality to maximize the effects. So like we don't all have to be this. We create leaders at like these NCOAs and senior NCOAs and all this other stuff. It's like we don't have to do that. We have to create people that are good at what they're doing and that know who they are and know where they fit into an organization, know how to fill the gaps to make that organization as successful as possible. So that's just my thing about the L word that I hate.
Well, yeah, if you use any word, as much as we do with the word leader, it loses all meaning, right? Like, oh, I have a whole room full of leaders. These guys are leaders because they got out of ALS. This guy's a leader because he went to a joint PME. This guy's a leader because he has experience. Like, there's different gradations, but if everybody's a leader, then nobody is. And you're just kind of like working in this, commune of dudes. Like, that's not how it works.
Well, that's a great point. So that you bring up, Aaron, in terms of, if everybody's a leader, nobody's a leader. Well, that also means that you have to be able to follow. So a good, senior NCO, airman, whoever outside of that is, you need to know when you need to step up and whether it's take charge or whatever you want to call it, or you just need to shut up and like, okay, this person's got it. This person is running it. I am better served, or the mission or the organization or this task is better served if I just take in the communication, take in the instruction, take in the intent, and now I move out with it. Nothing.
Yep.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
It was just, you're right. I got it. I agree. Nothing follows. This page left intentionally blank. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Good talk.
But yeah, I mean, there's different ways to be a follower too, though, right? Like there's doing exactly what you're told versus making stuff happen. There's taking initiative as a follower, which is very nice. As if you're in charge of something, if your folks below you take initiative to do what needs to be done, it's important. So like I get frustrated sometimes, like with the Hollywood depictions of military folks that are like, hey, all you go jump off that cliff. They're like, hoorah, we're going to jump off that cliff. It's like, no, that's not your job. Your job is to interpret, look for opportunities, all these other things. Just because you're a follower doesn't mean you're just sitting on your butt waiting for direct orders. We're not Europeans. We're not all the other military forces in the world that are so inflexible that they just don't do anything unless they're directly told because they're scared of their higher ups. Don't be scared of all the supervision chain. Find work and do it.
Boy, that was a spear chuck there, huh?
No, it's from the classic quote. So I think it was like a French or a European dude basically was talking about the American fighting man. And he was like, I've never seen anything like it. Everybody's huge. They all eat protein since the time they're like 2 years old. And in the absence of orders, they just attack. They don't need somebody to point them at a problem. They just coalesce. Little groups of paratroopers will look around and they'll just be like, hey, there's a bunker over there. I know Dad didn't say go kill the bunker, but looks like that bunker needs killing. And then they go do that.
But he was like, be real happy if we bring that bunker home with us.
Yeah.
See that?
Hey, I bet there's a bunch of weapons in there we could take home. He's going to be so proud of us.
So then to that point, do we think that we are still fostering that kind of mentality?
I hope so.
Right. Yeah. I would hope so too. I think, we're so far. Trent now officially retired, Mr. Seg Miller on the podcast.
I've been working on my beard for weeks. Can you tell?
It looks really good. Yeah. It's coming in really nice. I think that those, and that's always the hope, right? And again, there's so many parallels with, parenting and raising children and stuff. You hope that you never want to see people do things exactly the way that you did. You never want to see your exact plan go forth. You want to see a better version of yourself. You want to see, some of the things that you care about carried on in the next generation and other people doing it their way. And I think there's a ton of that going around today. I think there's a ton of people out there that are still leading hard and still being, accountable and being transparent and trying to learn as they go. I think those things are still happening everywhere. Like always, you get further and further away from a time period or further away from the team room that you were in, 15 years ago. And of course, it's going to look different. But I'm long on, AFSPEC war. I'm long on America in general. So I think that, a lot of the hemming and hawing and, worries about what's going on right now in the zeitgeist, I don't usually get too wrapped up into those. But, to answer your question directly, yeah, I think we are still leading hard and teaching, young leaders how to be good leaders. And I think as long as we continue to pour ourselves and our experience into that younger generation, whether it's through podcasts or, face-to-face mentorship or, phone calls or text messages, I think that that's still valuable. I think we're still doing that. So I'd like to say yes. And again, maybe that's just me being an idealist, but.
No, I didn't have any kind of thought behind it in terms of like I've already got this in the back of my head. I think it's very relatable to the this next generation kind of thing, which I don't subscribe to. This generation is weaker, or we had it harder, or whatever. They're the product that we're getting is bullshit, because I don't agree with that, and I think that's still kind of that same question, if you will. It's just phrased differently, in terms of if we're still enabling, or if people coming in still have that kind of mentality is, hey, I don't need to tell you, just that building needs to be destroyed. Go destroy it.
Yep. Well, I mean, there's a few examples like of I remember when the Bull was the group commander, right? He never told us how to do anything, but he would like walk into a room and be like, hey, he would encourage you. He'd be like, you guys are doing great stuff. Like, we are great. Like he would just fire you up to go do. Like with in the history of wanting to make Dad proud, when Bull and SG were in charge of the group, and they couldn't be more opposite people, by the way, the colonel and the chief. And that to my point, like there's different types of people that you want to make proud. Like if you can get SG to like smile at you or say good job, it's like that's like a career achievement. They're like, you can have the Medal of Honor, or this guy can say that you did a good job. I'm like, please let him say that I did a good job, because like I can't get anything out of that guy. But like
it's tough to get something out of him.
Yeah, but there was no expectation like this is going to be the same as it was for me. That like it's all just like, I trust you guys with everything. Like you all are crushing it. Go out there and do what needs to be done. Like kind of like inspirational leader, and you have to give those people the space to do it. Like I think there are certain people, like there was a master sergeant down at SWIC a little bit ago, combat controller, big dude, who I still see his name pop up in comments like on YouTube and Instagram, that people are still trying to live up to that dude's standard. And he just barely left a little bit ago and went to an STS. But like that type of person, I think we are still fostering that, like the aspirational goals of these younger people to be like, some of these folks. And so to a certain extent, and it's always been like, hit and miss. We've all had terrible commanders and chiefs and NCOs and all this other stuff, but also like we're all still in. So we obviously had enough good ones that we're all still aspiring to be those people, or to make them proud of what we're doing. Yeah.
Well, you also learned a lot from those folks too, you know, which, we who do you learn more from? The person that was good, or the person that was bad?
Depends.
I don't know.
I'll say if someone higher up in my leadership chain is bad, like that's a good learning experience. But I'll say people in my chain that are below me that are really good, I learn a ton from those guys. Like that guy that was a SWIC. Like I outrank him, whatever. And I know he's like, it's weird to have conversations with him and be like, oh, you guys are doing great stuff or whatever. And I'm like, bro, like I'm just trying to be like you every day. Like you're crushing it. I'm just trying to keep up with that next generation of, NCO, senior NCO that is still pushing the boundaries to be as good as they can be.
Well, Aaron knows this. Bill Adams, dude.
Yep.
I mean, he wouldn't necessarily give you feedback in terms of, hey, you need to improve this, you need to do this. He would get the best out of you just by his performance, because you're like, this dude is so good at everything that I mean, he's so squared away. Just the epitome of what you would want to be, right? And then you're like, well, I just want to emulate that. And so you would try your best to do it. And even then, he would still just outperform you.
Yeah, 100% of the time. Wow, Bill Adams, legend.
Yep. Yeah.
So, senior NCOs, be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job, Trent. Good wrap up.
One more thing though on that. One more thing. As a senior NCO, not just as a senior NCO, but any of them, right? And I'll extend this to the private sector too. If you are in one of those kind of positions, you have to understand the impact that you are having on people's lives in terms of promotions, their income, the quality of their lives. And I'll say it from a military aspect, is you have had fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, cousins, husbands, wives, children that have lent their service member to the DoD, regardless of the service, and they are entrusting you to care, feed, mentor, and build up the person that they are lending to you, because they are being lent to you. The Air Force or the DoD may think that they own you, but they don't, because eventually, whether it's in 6 years, 12 years, 20 years, 25 years, you will take that uniform off and you will then return to your family or whatever situation you have. So they are trusting us to take care of that person, to hold them accountable, to develop them, to ensure that they are being taken care of. So that is on you. That is on all of us. And you got to take that seriously. Like, you can't scoff at that. That is, and when you actually start to think about it, it's a pretty heavy weight. You're like, dude, that's wild. But I mean, if one of my kids were, hey, I'm about to join the military, it's like, well, hey, I'm trusting you. I'm trusting all those people in that chain, from the recruiter that they meet day one to throughout their entire time, is I'm trusting you to take care of my person.
Yep. Well said.
But like,
Okay.
Also an opportunity, right? As a position, as a person in any of these positions of, rank and leadership, you have the opportunity to affect people's lives. You have the opportunity to make everything better. You have the opportunity to help them reach their potential, to grow in ways that maybe they didn't think possible. You have the opportunity for you to learn from them and to grow, to learn how to do things in a totally new and different way. And I think that was when we started. Really, the crux of what I was upset about is senior NCOs not realizing how much impact they could have and not maximizing the potential of the people below them. Because that's what gets me excited. That's what gets me going every day, is watching people, grow and become the person that they wanted to be, or more than they ever thought that they could be. Like, that's the good stuff right there. And that's what, every day is an opportunity to do that.
It is.
Feels like a good place to end it, boys.
Yeah. We've exhausted everything now.
Aaron's like, I just go to work and crush people.
Yeah.
You guys are so not as good as I was.
That's not it at all. It's the worst. It's the exact opposite, as a matter of fact. But hey, make sure to follow us on onesready.com. Go check out the Instagram account. If you had any questions, shoot us a DM. We always answer them. I always love getting a DM where they're like, oh, I didn't think you guys were going to answer. Why would we not answer? It's why we're here. It's legitimately why we're here.
It just may take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
You're really good at answering it pretty quick, but
I usually try to get there. I just don't tell them it's me. That way they take the advice. You know what I mean? Sometimes they even sign a little peach on the end of it. You don't know who it is. What's up?
You're just assuming it's peach.
That's not true. That's not true. I don't do that. But yeah, thanks for following along. We appreciate it. Throw us a review. That'd be great. Leave a little comment for the algorithm. We got a ton more content for you on the way.
That's it. Later.